everyone, it's Beth Goody from Goody Goods, and today I'm going to teach you how to join two sections of your FPP blocks together. I was requested to do this video after posting my FPP tutorial the other night, so I thought I would make a very quick video showing you the technique that I use to match up my points so that I get a seamless join. So let's hop right into it. So before we get started, I have a few things I want to say. Notice how I still have the paper in my block. I have not ripped any of it out. You will want to keep the paper in your FPP blocks until you're done joining them. At the very end, that's when you're going to take all of the paper out. So the things that I'm going to use for this step are some pins, some clips, and my iron. Usually when I'm making an FPP pattern, I have a bunch of blocks, done in a pile, ready to be pieced together at the very end. So sometimes those blocks get a little wrinkly, and you can see some of the fabric comes off the paper sometimes. So what I like to do before I join anything together is give my block a little press. This is going to help keep everything nice and flat for accurate piecing. So I'm going to just do a little pressing. Notice how I'm just pressing and I'm not going crazy with my iron all over my block. I really just want to set those seams down and get that fabric to lay flat. Another thing you could do, and this would be very helpful in bigger sections, is you could take your Elmer's glue stick that you used at the very beginning of piecing your block. You could use this again and secure some of the flappy fabric that's not staying still. So sometimes, depending on the piece, if I know that the fabric's going to shift a little bit, I'll just do a very light application of glue so that I can secure those pieces of fabric down. So let's put a little bit on just to show you what that looks like. And then I like to set the glue with the iron, and that just helps it really lay nice and flat. Like I said, this is very helpful for some of the FPP patterns that are larger sections or maybe have weird angled fabrics. Sometimes they get flappy and they won't lay flat. So we have pressed our blocks, we have adhered the fabric to the paper, just using a tiny amount of that glue right there. You don't want to put too much because it might make it difficult to tear out the paper when you're all done. So now we are going to look at the back of our papers, okay? There's 2 points. This is our solid line. We know that this is our piecing line, okay? The seam allowance is to give us something to sew onto. So what we're going to do is we are going to line up our blocks using this solid line as a reference. So I'm going to take one block. First I'm going to figure out how I want this to lay, okay? And I'm going to do right sides together, and I'm going to lay one block on top of the other. And then what I really want to make sure of is that my two solid lines right here match up. My points match up and my lines match up. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to take one pin and we're going to pin it through the very corner, the very tip of that line, and pin it through. And then we're going to look on the other side to see if that pin came through at the very point. You can tell this is a little off. So I'm going to reposition, I'm going to take my pin out, I'm going to slide my fabric down a little bit, and I'm going to pin again. Sometimes you just have to do this a few times until you get the perfect match. Okay, so look on this side. See how it's going through that very point on the top? And then now we're going to look at the back, and we're going to make sure that that pin is coming out at the very point of the other piece. And that looks like a good match to me. So now I'm going to get another pin and I'm going to pin the other point on this side. I'm going to pin it through the top, right at that point. See there? And I'm going to flip it over. That's just a hair off. It's not coming out right at that point. So I'm going to take it out and reposition my fabric a little bit, pin it again, and there we go. We see it coming out the very point of the opposite side. That's what we want to see. So I'm going to push my pin through, and then I'm going to grab my clips over here and I'm going to clip along the side in between the pins. This is going to make sure that my blocks don't shift while I'm sewing. I'm going to take these out as I go. And then I like to take the pins out once I get this section clipped. I will take the pin out and then I will clip right there. I'm going to take this pin out as well, and then I'm going to clip to keep it all in place. Now I'm going to take it on over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew directly on that solid line at 1.5 or lower stitch length. A hack or a tip that I have for you, obviously this block's a little bit smaller, but seam ripping FPP is notoriously terrible. It's a pain in the butt because your stitch length is so small. So a thing that you could do if you're unsure on your placement or whether it all lines up, or if it's just a really big join in a pattern, you could keep a regular stitch length, sew on that line, flip it over and make sure that your points match up. Then you could go back and sew it at the shortened stitch length, just to ensure that you have the placement correct and you don't have to seam rip. So since this is like a smaller block, I'm not too worried about it not matching up perfectly because we've used our pins and we've clipped it in place. I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew with my shortened stitch length all the way down this line. So I'm going to show you what I do. I have my stitch length already turned down to 1.4, and I am going to stitch on this line. I'm going to start at the very top of my paper just to get a very strong seam. It'll enforce it a little bit better, and I'm going to sew on this line, back stitching just a little bit, and I'm going to go through my block, taking my pins out as I go. Alright, this is what we've got. We can see that we stitched right here. Look at how tiny those stitches are. Very tiny. And now what we're going to do is we're going to tear out just this part, just the paper that's hanging out in our seam allowance now. This is going to help us when we're ironing to make sure that we really get a flat seam when we press this open. So I'm going to rip this part off. See how it's on the seam allowance? Take it out. This helps with bulk as well when you've got your whole pattern together. Less paper in the seams, just makes it a lot better. Now I'm going to take it on over to my ironing mat and iron it open. So let's do that. So this is what we've got. Now I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to keep it not fully open, but I'm just going to kind of have it at like a 90-degree angle, and then I'm going to take my iron and I'm going to get right into the very corner and then work my way over so that I'm making that seam go in one direction. You could choose to iron these seams open in the back. That can definitely help with bulk for some of the FPP patterns that you'll be doing. But for me, I'm not too concerned. You can see on the back now, the seam is going in one direction. Again, we are going to keep the paper in. We're not taking the paper out until we're all the way at the end of our block. The only paper that you'll be taking out before you're all finished is the paper that is in your seam allowance while you're joining it, okay? And so, there you go. That is how you join two sections of an FPP block together. I hope this video was helpful for you. Please let me know if you have any questions, and if you have any requests for FPP videos, put them down in the comments below. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you are enjoying this quilty content over on my channel. I'll see you guys later. Bye!